Welcome to Planet 412. Happy holidays, everybody. It's Christmas Eve, and you know what? I was thinking to myself, I care so much about all of my Planet 412 links, and what could I do to, spread the love a little bit this season? So I thought, why don't we make a double video for you guys on Christmas? This one is titled The Christmas Terror of Frostwood Grove. The Carver family lived in a cozy cabin at the edge of Frostwood Grove, a sprawling forest known for its towering evergreens and the eerie stillness that settled over it during the winter. This year, determined to find the perfect Christmas tree, the Carvers, father Tom, mother Emily, teenage son Jake, and little daughter Sophie ventured deep into the snow covered woods beyond the usual trails. Like I said, they really wanted that extra special one. The day was cheerful at first, with laughter echoing as Sophie threw snowballs and Jake boasted about his axe wielding skills. The crisp air smelled of pine, and sunlight danced on the frost coated branches. Eventually, they stumbled upon a majestic tree, a towering Douglas fir with branches spread wide like welcoming arms. This one, Sophie whispered in awe, pointing. As Tom began chopping, the forest seemed to grow quieter. The usual sounds of birds and rustling branches disappeared, replaced by an unnerving stillness. Jake, carrying the saw, stopped mid step and glanced around. Mom, do you hear that? He asked. Hear what? Emily replied, though her voice betrayed unease. A low, guttural growl rumbled from somewhere nearby. It was deep and primal, vibrating the air and sending a shiver down their spines. Even some of the snow came off some of the branches from the vibrations. Tom stopped chopping. Probably just a bear, he said, though his grip on the axe tightened. But Jake's face went pale. That that wasn't a bear, he whispered. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by a bone chilling howl that echoed through the trees. Sophie clung to Emily, her small hands now trembling. The first sign of movement came to their left, a shadow slipping between the trees, massive and hunched. Then another shadow. To the right, Tom took a step back, pulling Sophie behind him. Everyone stay together, he commanded. Emerging from the shadows was a creature that defied explanation. It stood nearly 9 feet tall, its body covered in matted, dark fur. Its face was twisted and ghastly, a grotesque mix of ape and wolf, with a mouth full of jagged teeth that gleamed in the dim light. Its eyes burned red, intelligent, and filled with malice. This didn't look like the friendly Bigfoots that people see online sometimes. This was something different. Jake choked out a single word. Gugwe. Emily looked at him, confused. What? I read about it online, he stammered. It's like a Sasquatch, but worse. They're horribly violent. They hunt people. People disappear all the time. Oh my God. No, don't do this to us. As if on cue, the Gugway lunged forward with terrifying speed, its claws slicing through the air. Tom swung his axe wildly, forcing the creature back, but it let out an ear splitting screech that let the trees tremble. All four of them felt it go through their bodies. The two children started to go down on their knees. Something else he noticed online. infrasound. I've heard of this before. Animals, predators utilize it when they do it to prey. It causes the fluids and organs inside to shake and vibrate. It discombobulates animals and makes them easier to kill. Suddenly, another Gugway appeared behind them, blocking their escape route. Its snarl revealed blood-stained teeth as though it had already fed that day. "We have to run," Emily shouted, dragging Sophie and Tom. And Jake formed a barrier between the family and the monsters. He felt like, how am I going to protect my entire family? There's more than one. The Carvers dashed through the snow, their hearts pounding as the Gugway pursued them. Their guttural growls and snapping branches closed in. Jake tripped and fell, but scrambled up just as one of the creatures swiped at him, catching him and drawing blood. Finally, the family burst into a small clearing, bathed in an eerie, unnatural light. There stood a massive ancient tree, its roots tangled and exposed, its trunk adorned with strange carvings. The Gugway stopped at the edge of the clearing, snarling and roaring, but hesitant to enter the open space. Emily turned to Tom, panting. "Why aren't they following us?" Jake pointed to the carvings. I think it's some kind of a barrier, a sacred spot or something. Somebody must have put this up a long time ago. They won't come after us for some reason." The Gugways circled the clearing, their red eyes glaring with hatred, but they dared not cross the invisible line. The family huddled together, shivering as night fell. The creatures watching from the shadows. Eventually, the Gugway faded back into the forest, their howls echoing into the distance. At dawn, the Carvers stumbled back to their cabin, shaken but alive. They never spoke of the Gugway to anyone, but they never returned also to Frostwood Grove either. That Christmas, their tree was a modest, store-bought pine, but it was decorated with trembling hands and tearful gratitude. They had survived the terror of Frostwood Grove, but the memory of those burning red eyes would haunt their dreams and Christmas memories forever. From then on, they made one family rule: never venture too far into the woods. That was truly a horrifying story. The snowstorm was relentless. Dylan Carter and Jack Mercer, both seasoned hunters and longtime friends, trudged through knee-deep snow in the Wyoming wilderness. Their Christmas Eve hunting trip from last year had taken a deadly turn when the skies darkened prematurely, and suddenly a blizzard engulfed them. They'd underestimated the storm's ferocity, and now, miles from their truck, survival was their only concern. The wind howled through the trees like a banshee, whipping snow in their faces and erasing any semblance of a trail. They truly started to fear for their lives. Their flashlights barely pierced the dense flurry of white. You know, when you've been in a bad snowstorm and you turn on the brights because you're not supposed to, and you just can't see past it? This was that, times two. Dylan, shivering beneath his insulated jacket, cursed under his breath. "We can't stay out here," he said, his voice nearly drowned out by the wind. "We'll freeze to death." Jack looked at him and nodded, his face pale beneath his hood. "There's got to be some shelter. Keep moving." They stumbled through the forest until Dylan spotted a dark shape ahead, a shack. barely visible through the snow, stood like a ghostly sentinel. Relief washed over them as they forced their way to its door. The shack was decrepit and abandoned, but it was shelter. Inside, they found a rusted iron stove, a few broken chairs, and a stack of firewood. "This'll have to do," Jack muttered, his breath visible in the icy air. As Dylan worked on starting a fire in the stove, Jack barricaded the door with a chair. The temperature inside was only marginally better than outside. But once the fire crackled to life, a semblance of warmth returned and hope. For the first time in hours, they allowed themselves to hope they might survive the night. But then the howling began. At first, they thought it was the wind. The sound was high pitched and mournful, echoing through the woods. But this howl was different. The more they heard it, it was deeper, more guttural, and terrifyingly alive. Dylan froze, his hand hovering over the stove. "Did you hear that?" Jack grabbed his rifle, his knuckles white. "Yeah, and it wasn't a coyote." The howls grew louder, moving closer, circling the shack. Then came the scratching, a slow, deliberate sound of claws dragging against wood, like somebody or something was walking along and just scratching the side of this place. The hunters exchanged a glance, their breath shallow. Something was out there, something far too large to be a wolf, and it wasn't alone. A deafening thud shook the door, and the chair blocking it rattled violently. Jack raised his rifle, aiming at the door. "Whatever it is, it's trying to get in." Dylan grabbed his shotgun, his hands trembling. All right, stay calm. We've dealt with animals before." But as the seconds ticked by, it became clear this was no ordinary animal. First of all, this thing was intelligent. How many animals do you know have the wherewithal and intelligence to go right to the main opening? This was doing that. The door bowed inward under the weight of whatever it was outside. Through the small frosted window, Dylan caught a glimpse of glowing eyes, amber and predatory, watching them from the darkness. The window was over 6 feet off the ground, and this thing was looking down and in, and it gave an intelligence. It knew to take a quick peek and boop, out of eyeshot. The door exploded inward, splinters flying. A massive creature burst into the shack. It was humanoid on 2 feet, covered in thick, matted black fur. Its head resembled a wolf's, but its body was gigantic. It was muscular, towering over them. They were both over 6 feet tall. This thing was dwarfing them. The Dogman, its snout curled back in a snarl, revealing teeth like daggers, extra long. Dylan fired first, the shotgun blast echoing through the shack. The creature staggered, but it didn't fall. It lunged at Jack, swiping with claws that tore through his jacket and flesh. Jack screamed, firing his rifle into its chest. The bullets barely seemed to slow it, almost like it just irritated it. They scrambled out of the shack, the blizzard swallowing them once more. The Dogman followed its heavy footsteps, crunching through the snow. It moved with unnatural speed, a predator toying with its prey. Run, Dylan shouted, pulling Jack to his feet. The trail of blood was leaving a perfect trail behind the men. The hunters stumbled through the forest, their weapons clutched tightly. The Dogman's howls echoed all around them, growing louder, closer, and there were more than one. It was toying with them, driving them toward exhaustion. Jack's leg gave out and he fell face first into the snow. Dylan turned, helping him up as the Dogman emerged from the shadows. Its amber eyes locked onto them, filled with intelligence and malice. They glowed. It wasn't eye shine. It's like there was a power source behind their eyes. Jack raised his rifle, his hand shaking. "We're not going to make it," he whispered. "Shut up and shoot," Dylan yelled, firing again. The shot hit the Dogman this time right in the leg, and for the first time, it let out a roar of pain. The creature staggered, its movements slowed, but not too much. The hunters seized the chance, dragging themselves through the snow, adrenaline and fear the only thing keeping them upright. Through some miracle, the truck appeared ahead. Half buried in the snow, Dylan fumbled with his keys, his frozen fingers barely able to grip them. He hit the starter, and the truck thankfully started right up. Jack climbed into the passenger seat, blood staining his clothes and the car. The Dogman emerged from the woods, limping but relentless. It charged, slamming into the side of the truck just as Dylan got the engine roaring. He floored the gas, the tires spinning before final traction. It broke the back window as it lashed out at the truck. The truck shot forward, leaving the creature behind. Its howls faded in the storm as the hunters drove away, their breaths ragged, their bodies battered but alive. As they were speeding as fast as the truck could go in the snow, they started noticing more sets of eyes on either side of the truck. They didn't care how many there were. Their only job was to get out of there. As they hit the main road and made a right turn, two more of the creatures slammed into the other side of the truck, busting every window on the vehicle. They still kept going, though. They didn't stop until they reached a motel hours later. "We can't tell anyone," Jack finally said. His voice was hoarse. Dylan looked at him and nodded. Who would believe us? Two cops claiming they were attacked by a wolf monster, a werewolf, a dogman, whatever you want to call it. It was a monster. Their decision was unspoken but mutual. They, however, told their families, who believed them without question. But to the world, the Wyoming forests held no horrors beyond the cold. Yet both men knew better. Out there in the endless white expanse, something waited, something that would hunt again. They were truly lucky to make it out of there with their lives. More people are becoming hip to the fact that there are things in those woods and the parks throughout the nation and the world that most people laugh about until they see it themselves.